Oh, and we are live. Welcome to Oz Property Investors Facebook Live. You can see here we have the amazing Scott Aggett of Hello House. How are you, mate?
Mate, I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me back on the show. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm excited for this one. We are going to get buyer ready. And I don't know if people know exactly what that means, but I'm keen to unpack it. We haven't got Jeff on today. You're seeing a bit of a...
Finally,
we killed him off. We got rid of him. Yeah. No. Yeah, Jeff has got a day off today, so it's going to be me and Scott Aggett, and we're going to be covering some pretty interesting topics. I think we've had you on quite a number of times, Scotty, because you add so much value, because you've been in the industry for a very, very long time, and I think there's a lot to unpack, but we haven't actually done like a step-by-step guide of how to go about, how to find, negotiate, transact, and purchase a property, and the correct sequence of those events. So this will be a bit of an ultimate guide on how to buy an investment grade property if you're up for the challenge.
Absolutely, mate. There's so much to unpack. So we'll go in baby steps and make sure people can follow along. But I think it's a really good topic. Whether you're on your first property or you're buying your fifth or your 10th property, there's a few little tips and tricks that we can share with people along the way in each of those 4 subheadings that you kind of discussed: find, analyze, negotiate, and transact. So yeah, ready to jump into it and talk about getting buyer ready.
Okay, mate. Well, let's do it. So give us, before we jump into that, what is your quote of the week? I've been privy to a bit of an intro to this already.
Well, as always, I'm completely unprepared for this, but today in the office, we were listening to quotes from Talladega Nights just to make us laugh in between doing work deals. So my one is just from I was about to say the late great, but he's still alive, Ricky Bobby, which is, if you ain't first, you're last. Terrible accent, but I love that movie.
You can be second.
Yeah, you can be second, but yeah.
You can be third. I like it. Any significance to property, that one?
Oh, look, I mean, I think it's beautiful, isn't it? It ties in nicely that if you don't get there first, then you might as well be last, because there's only one shot at buying a property, and then someone else beats you to it. So if you ain't first, you last.
Well played. Well done. Okay, good transition. Yeah. I've got a little quote of the week. I've got my little one. I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination. And I think that is a lot of what's going on at the moment. People are like, oh, I'm so worried about interest rates going up. Should I buy now? Should I wait now? What should I be doing in these current markets? And getting totally flustered and not trying to look at what's in their control. They're just more worried about external factors that they have no control over, but not what they have in their control. That makes sense.
That's good. And I think that ties in nicely with what we're going to talk about tonight as well, because I think that is the overarching message that I see in this group a lot from the experienced property players, is that this is just cyclical. It, anyone that's been around for more than 5 or 10 years has seen it go up and down. And I mentioned to you today when we spoke on the phone that, I'm waiting for the plateau or the drop all the time when the market's up, because I've just been through so many of those cycles. So it's good to know that. And for people that are just starting out, that it won't always be this way with low interest rates. And then at some point they'll go up and at some point they'll come back down again.
Yeah. And also, property prices are not stuck to interest rates. Like if interest rates go up, it doesn't necessarily mean the entire market goes down. There's those markets within markets. Okay, cool. Well, before we introduce the man, the myth, the legend that is Scott Aggett, and jump into today, so let's just give people a bit of a high-level overview of what we'll be covering off. Do you want to give us a bit of a high-level, Scotty, of what we'll be chatting about today?
Yeah, sure. So I've created a first-of-its-kind course called Get Buyer Ready. And it's really to address the industry statistics that we've been looking into at Hello House to try and find how long it's taking an average buyer in 2022 to transact property, basically. So we looked at it from working with some close mortgage broker referral partners to us, to our conveyancing partners that we work with, and then our own experience. And then we kind of crossed all that together to find some data points to match it up. And what we found was pretty horrific, dude. It was I can rattle these off now because we talk about them daily here at Hello House, but it takes on average an Australian buyer 7 months to transact property. It's 90 hours on average of your time. Typically, clients or customers, I should say, look at 300 properties via the internet or in the flesh with physical inspections
300
before they offer on 5 properties, which they miss on, and they end up landing the 6th property. Now, what we know about the 6th property from the research that we've done is typically they are overspending or compromising on the property they set out to purchase in the first instance, or both. And in my instance, having talked to lots of clients that get to us, having made multiple offers before they'll reach out to an expert, is that they're doing both. They've changed the shopping list by the time they get to us, and they've scaled it back. They've changed locations and areas to find better value elsewhere because they get priced out of where they started. And typically they've been trying to pay an emotional premium on properties where they were out of check. So we've really studied those stats, and it's a pretty horrific train wreck, as I said to you. And then we kind of looked at what we should do to address that. And we felt the best way that we could add value is to, dive into my nearly 3 decades of experience in the real estate industry to put together a course to take clients from finance ready, conditional finance approval, if we call that day 0, through to buyer ready. And as we say, that's a 7-month process at the moment. We want to get that inside a 90-day cycle. And to do that, I've put a lot of time and energy and about 3 hours worth of video content together to address how to find properties, how to analyze them effectively and fast, how to negotiate, so building strategies and tips and tricks around that, and then how to transact effectively to not become a statistic and make sure you buy the right property and not get a bad asset, and that you buy it at the right price in a timely fashion. So I thought if we can address some of these things today and give people those skills to start to finish through that buying process, that'll be a good little takeaway for people, whether they're on, as I say, the first property or their 5th or 6th purchase.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what this group is all about, is educating people on how to do those 4 things. How do you find a property? How do you get yourself, well, I'm messing up the sequence here, but how do you get finance ready? How do you get buyer ready? How do you find an investment grade property? How do you actually analyze and deep dive into the data of that? And then when you found one, what the heck do you do with it? And how can you optimize your purchasing strategy to actually secure it? So it's not the 5th one that you're offering on and the 6th one that you're winning. You're actually securing the one that you want with the things that you want them to do. So let's dive into our ad from a pretty handsome bloke here. I think it might be you, mate. And
have you done your own ad this time, mate?
The Joe Tucker ad. So yeah, everyone throw some questions, throw some comments below. We're going to be sequentially going through the steps of how to get an investment grade property. So this is one to watch, but also it's going to be, since we haven't got Jeff here, we need you to be, as the audience, our Jeff. So please throw your questions in there as well. Let's do it. This live session is sponsored by Scott Aggett from Hello House. Scott has created the world's first property negotiation as a service business. So what does that mean? Well, let's think about it. When was the last time you negotiated on anything over $100, let alone a property that is going to be one of the biggest investments of your life? The vendor, they have a trained negotiator on their side in the form of a real estate agent. That's kind of like you stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson after never training a day of boxing in your life. These guys are trained professionals, and that's what they do day in and day out. And this is what Hello House does every single day as well. They negotiate on property to get the best buy price from the real estate agents. Scott Aggett, he's the expert negotiator. He has been in this industry since 1995. He owned, operated franchises. Scott was the guy that was teaching these real estate agents all these agent games. He knows all of their tricks. Having him on your side is going to give you a massive unfair advantage and literally save you tens of thousands of dollars. Unlike other ways of purchasing property, Scott's incentives are aligned with you, the buyer, meaning the more money he saves you, the more money he makes, which is what you want. You need to have those incentives aligned. Scott has kindly offered our group a massive discount on the retainer fee for his service. So if you're looking to buy your next home or investment property, click the link below to get in touch.
He is attractive.
There we go.
Yeah.
Ticks all the boxes, this guy.
I say it every time, but it still looks like you snuck in the Tinder swindler into that ad.
What, the last bit?
No, there's a guy in about halfway through the ad that looks like the guy out of the Tinder swindler. So
Well, we'll keep him for the next one. We've got a
editing.
bit of, yeah. So, who is this gentleman that we have here? We have Scott Aggett of Hello House. Well, I mean, you just watched the ad that went through it all, but Scott Aggett's been in the industry for over 28 years. You've done now 29 of your own property deals, which you've either bought, sold, traded, kept. You've done all of it, developed, renovated. You bought properties in New Zealand. You own a ski lodge. Sorry, not New Zealand, Japan, another great ski destination. As it said in the ad, you've owned and operated 3 Bell franchises and done over 3,000 property deals. So when it comes to property negotiation, you're definitely the man to listen to. What's something that we missed in your intro, Scott Aggett? What is something that no one really knows about you?
I don't know. I was a snowboard instructor in Colorado when I was 21. There's a fun fact.
That kicked off the obsession with Japan and skiing, did it?
Yeah, totally. Except one slight setback is I wrapped myself around a tree on Australia Day in 1999, and then that's what's given me a chronic back injury. But the love of the cold and the snow is still there, even though my snowboarding might not be up to the quality that it was pre age 21.
Oh God. Okay, there we go. We're bringing up some hard memories.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I wanted to deep dive into this whole get buyer ready, and you talked about some of the statistics and numbers. So, like, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing out there that is facing property buyers this in 2022? What are some of the challenges?
Well, I think it's a lack of education. There's not a great deal of information for people out there that they can piece together how the buying journey is going to play out for them when they start the process. So, we talked about earlier about the statistics and how we workshop that with mortgage brokers to understand right from the very start for the buyer journey. Once you do get conditionally approved, what do you do next? Excuse me. And what we found when we talk to banks, when we talk to major lenders and really active market-leading mortgage brokers in Australia, is that they don't do very much at all, if anything, post getting conditional approval for the client. So basically, day one is bye-bye, go and find a property, and then come back when you're ready with a contract or with a property that you found that you want to discuss with us. So it's education, I think, is the big thing that's a challenge for buyers in 2022. What's happened in the market has moved so much in terms of how the agents present properties to clients, how they train in scripts and dialogues. So throughout the time that I was in the industry, so from 1995 through to 2015 as a selling agent, the whole game changed significantly, and it moved greatly when I first started with the introduction of realestate.com, I think around 1994, 95.
Yeah.
And since then, it's just gone up and up and up in terms of the skill level of who you're competing against when you're out trying to buy a property. So we are just, and I talk we as in just the general market buyers, are unprepared for the agent games and the sales tactics that are going to be used against you. And I still think this is the biggest challenge facing the real estate industry in Australia, is that there's a lack of professional help assisting general public buyers. Less than 3% use a buyer's agent. That number is growing as far as we can see quite fast in Australia, but still coming off a very low base. Over 20 odd years they've been doing it nationally against, in the US, for example, or other countries where it's more than 50%. So, we talk to people that are overseas that have come to Australia to buy property, and they just can't understand that you're left to your own devices to fight against an agent employed by the seller to extract an emotional premium out of you and to get you to pay, top dollar for a home. So I think it comes back to education is the biggest thing. And I think another big challenge that you guys talk about a lot, and for good reason, is just fear mongering in the media. There's so many, short-term people in the industry that aren't particularly well educated in this space, that all have their opinion. You and I both know, we've had this conversation before in regards to property journalism, that we'll both get calls from journalists that aren't really interested in fact-checking our history or certain things. They're just looking for a bite-sized grab that they can use in a headline or a quote in a paper where they've got a very specific angle they're trying to push already. And that's so dangerous to the public, because they can't get a really clear read on what's happening in the market, what they can expect to happen longer term. And I do believe that, whether you're buying at the height of the market or the base of the market, you've really got to be in it for the medium to long term. And it's time in the market, as we've spoken about lots, versus trying to time the market. And just not enough people understand that. So the education thing is key.
Yeah. And what would you say to someone that's like, you know what, we've gone through a substantial boom right now. I should just kind of hold off and try and time this thing and wait for it to, reach the perfect bottom. And then I'm going to jump in and start buying my property.
Well, at the moment, I guess something that's really relevant for your buyers and everyone in this group is that if you are debt funding the property and you're going to a bank or a lender, the longer you hold on in this perceived drop in the market, the less borrowing capacity you have, as it's eating away at the top end of your limit. So in reality, if the market continues to drop and rates continue to go up, it's just going to get harder for you to buy at the level that you thought you were going to be able to buy it. So I'm noticing a lot with that with our clients currently is that they set out to spend, 2.5 million, 2.2 million, whatever the number is. And in the last 3 months, they're now down to kind of 1.8 million and they're hesitant to buy. So there's still a lot of buyers in the market, but they're definitely lost a lot of their confidence and they're just not sure whether to commit. And then that's the conversation we're having around, well, this is really relevant for you because, what you're trying to do is time the market and it's just impossible. So let's drill down as to what's driving the buying decision. And is this something that you're doing for your family, for your lifestyle, for work, whatever it might be? And is that more important for you than, X? And whether you save 10,000 or 100,000 on the way down, it's very difficult to catch a falling knife. But it's just about getting into the market and then holding on and be aware that rates will go up and down, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing that. I'm seeing that a lot. People are like, you know what, I will try and time this. But it's about, so every 0.5% rate rise, it's about 5% of your borrowing capacity. Now, every bank is different, every lender is different. So it's not a hard science, but just kind of factor that in. So if you've got a $500,000 purchase price and rates go up 0.5%, you're down 50 grand the next time you go back to try and get the property refund to go buy it. So if you are on that kind of line of borrowing capacity, it might be now is a better time to buy because you'll have more borrowing ability. But I am starting to see that in the top end of the market where you're at, 2 million, 3 million. It's starting to come off the boil, but for the lower value, like 400, 500, 600,000, I haven't yet seen it come off the boil just yet. Are you seeing that? Are you starting to see any movement in the areas that you guys are buying?
Yep. So there's definitely been some softening in most markets across Australia from what I can see from buying on clients' behalf around the country at different price points. And we don't just deal at that kind of higher end. We deal with anything from or any buyer at any price range is the simple answer to it. So I'm exposed to it at sometimes at 200 grand on the same day as I might be exposed at 15-20 million dollars. So it's interesting to see those dynamics at play and how the agents work and the supply and demand metrics that go on in different parts of the market. But there's no one single market, right? So you really have to drill down on what it is that's driving your particular reasons to invest in a certain area, and then understand the dynamics at play there. So to your point, just saying, have I seen it? Yesterday, I had a client of ours that was trying to sell a property in Toowoomba. Over the last 6 months, that market was flying. They've got a property at 440 odd grand, and it's been on the market for 6 weeks with no love at all. It's in a good street, decent location, great, rental. It's been leased long-term to the same tenants, and they just hadn't had any bites on it for 6 weeks with a market-leading agent, or what we perceive to be a strong local agent. So obviously there's a sign things are hurting there, and that is reasonably consistent with most of the areas I'm dealing with.
Really? Yeah, I found that the stupid has gone out of the market. Like there were purchases that
I'm still in it though. I'm still here every day.
Stupid hasn't left. Stupid's still here. No, I am finding that people are that there used to be a mad rush where someone would throw in an extra 20,000, an extra $50,000 just to secure the property. I'm not seeing those type of purchases. So as a buyer, you can have there's a little bit more breathing room. So rather than it selling before the open or on the first open, it's now going to the second open. And but for good properties in good locations, I'm still finding that they're still getting snapped up at reasonable prices. It's just not that crazy that it was before.
Yeah, I agree. Asset
Mm.
selection is crucial, and the good assets are still in high demand. There's definitely not the same level of heat that was in the market, but those ones are mostly competitive when we try and negotiate for clients in good suburbs around the country. That there's multiple buyers, not quite the 4 or 5 or 10 or I think I showed you a text message last year of 55 in one day that we're offering on contract on the
Wow.
same day in Southeast Queensland, but it's more like 2 or 3 people, and that seems to be pretty consistent with Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane on most of the things I offer on in good locations for things that are reasonably well priced and still in high demand.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, that's a good bit of market wrap. Anyone have any questions about the current market? Throw them in the comments below. One thing that you mentioned there, Scotty, that stuck out to me that I look for when I'm buying an investment property is if not specifically look out for it, but I like to see is it the property has a lease on it, like a long-term lease, because that property that you said has been on the market for 6 weeks. Do you think that is because it has a lease already on it and it's not getting that owner occupier appeal because it's so far out until it gets a new tenant, or sorry, an owner occupier can't buy it because there's a tenant in there?
Yeah, there's an element of that. I mean, in a perfect world, if I put my sales hat on from being an agent, you'd have the very end of the lease, so it'd still be occupied if it was presented nicely. So there's still an income stream for somebody or the current owner, but then there'd be an opportunity for an owner occupier to take that on straight away. So you're opening up to the full market. I don't know how much of a deterrent it is in this market right now, because I think so many of those regional areas of those price ranges have been driven by interstate and other, Brisbane, Gold Coast buyers, for example, buying in those Southeast Queensland corridors. So I'm not sure how much of that is affected by it, but it's definitely going to have some impact on it. It's one of those, chicken and egg things. Like, it might put off some buyers, but it's going to be really attractive to you, as you just said, as an investor, because there's a sitting tenant in there. There's consistency. There's rent flow coming through from day dot. So yeah, it's horses. Yeah, I was about to say it's horses for courses. It depends on which angle you're coming from, but I don't know why that hasn't sold. That kind of blew me away as well. I just thought those affordable price ranges in good locations like that would still have enough buyers there. So it's definitely a sign of what's happening, in the market, or they've just had bad luck on that particular home.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So cool. Okay. Well, let's start to jump into this course, because it is called the Get Buyer Ready course, and staying to the end. We've got a bit of a, not that we're very good at the whole promotion thing, but we do have a bit of an offer that Scotty is offering just this group.
I'll take my shirt off for $25 for every person that pays me. No, I'm joking. No one wants to see that.
Okay, well, let's jump into some of the questions. We don't have to jump into questions straight away. And I haven't read this one, so I hope it's appropriate. Evening, boys. Thanks for tonight. Can Scott talk to his thoughts on regional Australia growth? Obviously, regional aid has been good recently. However, supply and demand is the ultimate push on growth, and most regional areas have plenty of room for supply to come to the market.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And look, to be honest, it's not my skill set. It's not my core market. I don't spend a huge amount of time focusing on um, growth, whether it's in capital cities or regional areas. I have a team that specialize in that here with me, and Sam Powell, our valuer and property analyst, is probably the best person to talk to that point specifically. But I really focus on the negotiation aspect and trying to own that space as best we can for our clients. One thing that Joe and I, we talked about this today. I mean, you might have a view on this yourself, Joey, in terms of you're watching the regional areas like this, and I know you're focused on the growth side of things, but I still see, and we discussed this, we talked about it just before, that for good properties, there's plenty of buyer depth still there, and there's not a lot of supply. So there's still not, I don't think, an oversupply of properties. There seems to be a retreat of property sellers. So we just haven't seen a huge amount of stock in most of the areas that we're active in. So it's still taking my clients, a little while to find a property, because there's just enough buyers in the market that these things are turning over reasonably quickly. That is changing slightly. The days on market is blowing out, but it hasn't gone bananas in the wrong direction, where the supply and demand metrics are really out. But what are your thoughts? And talking about regional Australia is so broad. There's just, what's happening in Toowoomba, as we just said, versus what's happening in, Lawn, for example, or somewhere else, is just chalk and cheese.
Yeah, they're completely different markets, but the supply story is still there. There's not enough supply on the market of properties that's soaking up the current demand. I don't know. I research hundreds of properties a day. I'm going through multiple properties, but I'm still not seeing like a big influx of amazing investment grade properties that are out there. It's still a dime a dozen. It's still incredibly hard to find these ones. And you've got to have, speak to real estate, like actually what we're going to be covering off in this session about how you can be on those agent hot lists. But it's still a supply issue. We're still struggling to get good investment properties. But you're right. There is a few more days on market. It's going to be interesting when we go into spring to see if there's a big influx of people listing their properties. I'm not sure if people are holding off until then to list their properties to see how this whole RBA rate rise things go. I'm not sure what people are doing. But anyway, we said we're not going to get into tangents today. So I want us to go through exactly what it means to get finance ready. So that's pretty much this course. It's about understanding how to get buyer ready. And once you get finance ready and then you get buyer ready, how would you describe finance ready?
Well, I think finance ready is understanding your borrowing capacity, so you have a clear idea of what you can go out and start to search for. Because we have so many stories that we hear day to day in the industry of customers that go out looking for homes. When I was a real estate agent for 20 odd years, we would constantly have clients that would come to open for inspections, make offers, and then disappear off the face of the earth. They didn't have the ability to financially back that up. Or others would come to make an offer in an area where we really didn't accept conditional offers. There was certainly no finance clauses. Everything that we transacted was basically unconditional, and they fell in love with the property. They did exactly what we just discussed, like the mega man hours and the hard work and sweat finding these opportunities, only to get to that final hurdle and then realize they don't have the capacity to follow through and complete the deal. So finance ready for me is, if you're not buying cash, which I don't think we're talking to too many people here that are buying cash. Everyone else that's borrowing is working with a great broker or a bank, whoever you want to deal with in terms of your borrowing. Understanding, through your accountant, what the real numbers are, so what you can actually afford, what your day-to-day living costs are, and then put a real spreadsheet together of what your costs are to understand, what it is that you can borrow, where the comfort level is. And a lot of people will say to me, I can borrow $1 million, but I don't want to because I'm not comfortable at that level. So you've got to work that out yourself. You may be able to borrow a fat amount of money, but you may not actually want to do that because you can't sleep at night. If you lose your job, you'd be under high stress and the rest of it. So you've got to really understand those numbers. Once you've got a good idea of that, and once you've got a conditional approval in place from a lender, then you've got the ability to set out on that buying journey that we'll talk about now, and you can work through that first stage of the find step, which is really important.
Yeah, I find that this is where an investment savvy mortgage broker comes in really, really handy. So I was talking to a client today, and he's like, I have $1 million borrowing capacity. And I'm like, oh, great. So what kind of rental return do you need to be able to service this? And he said $450. He's like, that's what the broker told me. And that tells me that this mortgage broker is not really an investment savvy mortgage broker. He's just giving his max capacity and the minimum yield requirement that he needs. So you just need to go out there and say to your broker, well, this is what I like to say is, I've got $1 million. What's the best way to maximize this so I can get this first one and then get the next one and then get the next one? Looking three ahead is actually quite difficult, but looking at what is this purchase going to be that'll allow me to get this next one? Because what we're balancing, what we're balancing is our cash and our cash and equity in one hand, and then our borrowing ability. And once one tips out, you start running out of cash. Well, now we need to, fix this one and get a better cash flowing asset. Once we're struggling with the borrowing capacity, you balance those two things.
And it doesn't have to take too long to get finance ready. We talk to our mortgage broker partners, and the typical time it takes to get someone through that process is 30 days. That seems to be the average when we talk about this with the broker specialists in Australia. So if you can get yourself prepared, you're not locked out of the market for very long. Just go and get that sorted, and know that every 90 days you effectively need to refresh that and understand that you've still got the same capacity to act. Refer back to what we just spoke about in terms of if rates are increasing, then things may change. And, if 90 days you go out and make an offer on a property and then realize, well, I can't actually complete the deal at that price, then you're going to have to fund the gap somehow. So you need to be working really closely with a good broker, as you suggested. Yeah.
And do understand the loan, like the return that you need. So ask the broker, what kind of rental return do I need? Does it need to be minimum 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5? Like, what is actually going to get there? Because you don't want to find the most awesome property, because that's the first thing you do, right? Oh, I want to go buy a property. Perfect. I'll go on realestate.com.au and then have a look around. It's no, you've got to get that finance side of things done. Another thing to realize is once you get your pre-approval, you're generally speaking, you've got that for about 3 months. You've got it for 90 days. But once you hit the 91st day, you're no longer pre-approved. And then you have to go through the entire process again. And it's really quite a nightmare for yourself and also for your broker as well, because you've got to resubmit all of that paperwork. So I wouldn't go ahead and and it does a ping on your credit score as well. I don't know if it's credit score. I don't know. Someone correct me. I don't think that's the right word, but it pings there. So the banks know, oh, well, why didn't they get a property? Like, what's going on? There's some questions can be raised for the next one. So once you're ready and looking, go ahead and do that.
So I was going to say, a lot of brokers are telling me that they won't reapply every 90 days. They get a really good gauge of your financial position and your capacity, and then they can basically just do like an internal check on that. So they don't have to keep resubmitting every 90 days and doing that paperwork. And then they'll just resubmit when you find the right property. But it depends what broker you're working with. But as long as you know that, as you say, at that 91st day, things have potentially changed. So the risk's on you. If you change jobs, that rates change, anything else like that, amends on the run, then you should be checking that the whole time with your broker to make sure you've got the capacity to act.
Okay, so that's getting finance ready. So can we run through what is buyer ready? What is buyer ready? And then I think that does that kind of fork off into the 4 pillars of the purchase, does it? Or what is buyer ready?
Fork off. You tell me to fork off? We've only been on for half an hour.
It's quick. It'll
segue nicely into that. Well, I mean, getting buyer ready is the term that we use here every day. And I think it's just it's an easy one to carry on from getting finance ready. Everyone seems to understand that they've got to get finance ready. That's the very foundation of buying a property. And we believe the next step is you've got to get yourself buyer ready. So you go into it with your eyes wide open about what the property buying journey is going to be that you're about to undertake. And that's, as we've discussed, understanding how to find the property, understanding how to analyze, how to negotiate, and then how to transact that to get you through as quickly as possible with speed and to buy the right asset at the right price. So that's basically what getting buyer ready is in a nutshell. And as I said up front, we've put a lot of effort into kind of doing a warts and all course that really breaks that down and gives you the tips and tricks and downloads and things like that you can use to work through those on the go as you're hunting for a property. So it's about 3 hours worth of content, 3.5 hours worth of content. We won't do all that tonight, but we'll just do a very top line view of it to give some people, give the people some key takeaways and really to piece it together so you understand what steps come in what order.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the next step? Now we've got finance, we've got our investment savvy mortgage broker, and a way to find an investment savvy mortgage broker. Jump in the group and say, "Hey guys," well, actually search. Don't post a whole new comment. Just search mortgage broker, and you'll find some really, really good ones. But again, you need to feel a relationship with that person as well. So I'd make sure that you actually can get along with them. and then get your pre-approval in place. And then what's the next step? Do we jump on realestate.com.au and start having a blast, Scotty? Or what is the next step?
Well, the first thing that we encourage everyone to do is work out a shopping list. So spend some time to really determine what are the key 5 to 7 things that you need for the property that you're about to go and search for. So, and we'll go through these reasonably quickly, but you need to decipher that list between absolute must-haves, and there should be sort of 4 or 5 of those that are non-negotiables as best you can, and then maybe a couple, 2, 3 of like-to-haves. So mine, for example, might be Mermaid Beach, knocked down up to 1.5 million. It's got to be a minimum of 400 square meters of land, and it's got to be north to rear. So, that might be the key things for me, that if I talk to an agent, they're going to know exactly what I'm looking for that's active in that area. But then with that list, I can say, okay, great. Well, then let's go into realestate.com or domain, whatever you use, and actually see if that exists. And now how you do that is you go into the buy side and in the recently sold side. So don't go back too far, beyond 3 or 4 months to understand where the prices are going if you're looking in the sold section. But in the buy and the sold section, you'll get a very good sense of, does that property exist, or are you looking for a property unicorn? If the property doesn't exist, or there's not enough transactions like that, you may have to throw your net slightly wider. So I like to start, and I like to coach my clients on 1 to 2 suburbs as a core market search, because I believe that anything wider than that is too hard to research. So you really want to be committing 4 to 8 weeks to get in there and get your hands dirty and physically see as many properties as possible and track as many properties in the market as you can. And if you're going to do more than 1 or 2 suburbs in most built-up areas of Australia, this isn't going to be applicable for people that are looking for acreage or rare properties like that. But for the vast majority of the rest of us, 1 to 2 suburbs, there's enough transactions and volume in a marketplace that it's going to keep you very busy, and it'd be difficult for you to understand market value if you're searching 3 or 4 suburbs. So that's my first.
Is that even necessary? Like all of this, like local research and getting on the ground and actually going to these locations and doing it all? Can't you just skip this step? Like, I don't want to do the hard work. I just want the thing.
Well, there's a comment in the post there that says, do real estate agents actually train in property negotiation tactics? And can you give some examples? We can dive into that later. The answer to that is absolutely yes. They train with scripts and dialogues and the rest of it to extract a premium from you. But to bring this back, if you're not physically doing the hard work, what you're going to see is homes that are presented in their absolute best light by the agents who are trained to present property perfectly to the market. Okay. I'm talking about if you look online and you can look at all the spreadsheets you want under the sun, but nothing will replace physically being on the ground and looking at property. And there's a reason. It's because you can't understand the condition of a home when you're looking at a spreadsheet. It just doesn't work. I've been doing this for so long. I've had so many people argue with me over this, but there's just black and white for me that you cannot tell me the condition of a home when you're looking at a spreadsheet and data. And when you're physically inspecting a property versus looking at it and in a marketing picture from an agent, is you can't truly see the condition of the home. You can't see where the sun comes from, where the neighbors are looking at for privacy issues, the slope of the land correctly, traffic noise, airplane noise, everything. So agents will go to great lengths to present the property in its absolute best light. And to answer the question, you physically need to be on the ground to really ascertain where the value is in the marketplace and what part of what street, which part of each block you want to live on, because it can vary greatly from street to street.
Yeah, absolutely. I call that the hot spots and the not spots. And the data gives you look at the SA, you look at the state, then you go to the SA4, the SA3, you boil it down. But that's kind of where it ends. You kind of get to that suburb level, and the data can't give you so much that it solves all of your problems. You have to get off your butt and then fly to those locations. And like we said on your ad, it was like, this is going to be the biggest investment of your life. So I like to say, if you put a part-time effort into something, you're going to get a part-time result. And property is one of the most expensive transactions you're going to make. Don't let that be a part-time result. Just, spend your weekends, spend whatever you can to be able to get there and make it happen, because you have to find where is the area, because you will see some properties on one side of the street that make $80,000, $100,000 less. than a property just there. Like, why is that? Well, is it because, you know, there's subsidence issues, there's easement through the entire block, like there's something going on there.
Totally. So there's a few questions there that kind of link to this as well, like, you know, virtual inspections and FaceTime. Personally, I don't believe that you should be doing that. It goes to Joe's point there. If you're serious about spending what is potentially the biggest financial investment of your life, then spending $200 to get on a plane anywhere in Australia to fly there and have a look at it yourself is just absolute insurance policy. Having been on the wrong end of you know, those virtual inspections with agents and hearing horror stories from clients saying they bought properties and then what they got at the other end, they didn't quite realize. Agents, I'd like to say, have got the very best intentions of doing the right thing. There's lots of great agents, but they're also employed by the seller. And unfortunately, you know, a lot of them will do what they have to do to get a deal across the line. One of the key things is there's a lot of people in this industry that'll say to you, you know, you can do this all online. You can save the money and don't pay an expert and do it yourself. That's all well and good. But I've had clients ring me and say, well, you know, I saved 20 grand or I saved $30,000. So I did a fantastic deal and I got a great result. It's like, well, how much you saved, your perceived saving from the asking price or what the agent told you they wanted, is no reflection of market value. It's not a reflection of how well you bought the property. You really need to understand the dynamics at play in the marketplace. So I don't understand how you can possibly do that without physically inspecting lots of properties. And I've done some research on my own. You talked about my journey in terms of my, you know, 29 properties that I've bought over the years. I did some research for an article a few years ago and realized that on average, I see 50 properties physically before I buy every time. So I practice what I preach. I physically am out there on the ground because I have to get a really good read of the market before I'll commit my own dollars. And anyone that's not doing that, I think, is taking a high risk.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I think you need to have an independent person going there. If you're not going there, have someone that's not, like, the real estate agent will. If you're an interstate investor, they're like, guys, don't worry about it, I'll do a FaceTime for you. But one thing actually happened to me the other day. We were looking at a property and it looks really good. The flooring's brand new, and then we go ahead and book the inspection. We do the inspection, and we realize the flooring is a vinyl, you know, the rolling vinyl, like what you have in a kitchen in the 1970s. It was vinyl flooring throughout, not the clip-on boards that it looks like it is in the photos. It's that vinyl crap that wears out within, you know, not less than 10 years. Like, it's just garbage. And the entire house was done in that. So people are like, oh my gosh, this looks so clean, brand new and fresh. But 5 minutes later, it's not going to be able to do it. So step one is get finance ready. And step two is build a shopping list of the ideal asset. So what are we doing with our shopping list once we've got it?
Well, can I just briefly refer back to that last thing you were talking about as well? Because I had one other thing to refer to. A lot of people will say to you, you know, just use a local property manager. So do your virtual inspection and then have a property manager look at it on your behalf. Even if they're independent, they're not independent. The property manager is there to win your business. If they don't get your business, then they're wasting their own time inspecting that property. They might get paid for an hour's work or whatever you're going to give them, but their vested interest is having you as a new client. So they're not looking at it through the same set of eyes as you, because they're not paying for the problems that house might inherit or you might inherit from buying that house. So be really careful outsourcing it to a property manager, because normally, they're not trained, like they're not builders. They don't understand those things and where those real costs will run to. And if you do any research in the property management industry, and I built 3 rent rolls from scratch, I understand how they work from the inside out. There's a huge turnover of property management staff. We talk about it here on Oz Property Investors often. Property managers are so hardworking. The good ones are worth their weight in gold, but the volume and turnover is horrendous. So if you're going to rely on a property manager, they may not even be there in 3 months' time or a year's time. So you've got to be really careful if you're going to park your buck with them. Sorry, mate. I'll loop back to your other question. I just really wanted to cover that off because I hear a lot of people say, it's okay, I don't need to fly there. I'll just get a property manager to do it for me.
Yeah, great point here. Watched an agent do a FaceTime for a buyer. Didn't show the house falling off the stumps. If you're putting in the time, you won't get the best deals. And those are the things you only realize after you've done your pest, and hopefully you've done your pest in building, and that brings it up. But you can definitely hook a dud in that space. So okay, cool. So what are we doing with this shopping list? We've now noticed that this area has got the type of properties within $1 million within Mermaid Waters that is north, the facing north. What do we do with it?
So the next thing for me is to commit 4 to 8 weeks to see every single property I can that fits that criteria or is close to it. So if I'm looking for a 3-bed, for example, I'll go and see every 2-bed to 4-bed, 2, 3, 4 beds. I'll see either side of it so I understand where the value is in the marketplace. And that's why I can ratchet up the big numbers in terms of what I physically inspect, because I'll see so many of them that I'll work out where the sweet spot is in the market and where there's value for me as a buyer. So I think that's really key. Spend 4 to 8 weeks, commit to it. It's really hard. People have got kids sport, or they're working long hours. They might work work on the weekends. But if you really want to buy a property and you want to set yourself up for life, you have to commit some time to it. So I think if you're really hardcore for 4 to 8 weeks, that's all you need to do in most markets, even in a booming market. And you should get a really good gauge on what the real-time market value is that people are paying and what the market depth is, what your competition is going to be. So after you've hit the ground running and looked at open for inspections, I would be looking at every auction that happens in that local marketplace of those properties, so you can see that real time and what people are paying in terms of the prices, and then you'll get a gauge and an understanding of how many buyers are missing out. So if you're physically at an auction, this is another one of those ones where it's all good to look at it on realestate.com on Saturday night. After 6 o'clock, they'll send you the results. And the lazy option is to sit on the sofa with a glass of wine and see what all the results were on a Saturday. Yes, you can see what passed in and see what sold. Yes, you can see what the prices were. You have no idea of how it got to that level. And there's some real disparities around how the market works on any given day. So you could be at 12 Smith Street and 8 Smith Street, and they're identical houses, and one can sell for $640 at auction on Saturday morning, and one can sell for $580 at auction on Saturday afternoon. You need to be watching and realize why. Is it because something was overlooked? Is it because there's only 2 buyers in the marketplace and the best buyer bought the one in the morning? So you can understand the buyer depth. That's going to form later how hard you go with your offer. That's going to form what I call my fear of loss, because how I know the rate at which that asset is going to be, replicated. So is it going to be that deal flow? Is it going to be a 3-bedroom house in Mermaid Beach, that's knocked down at that price? Are they one a week? Are they one a month? How often do they come around? And that's going to generate the buyer interest. And then you can realize, well, hang on, when the right one does come up in that prime street that ticks all the boxes, I can't lowball them. I can't go in at 1.6 on a $2 million property, because I know that I've been to all the other auctions. There's 5 people lining up and it's going to sell for 2 mil, or it might even go to 2.1. So I'm going to have to go in with my best offer really quickly or very close to it if I want to secure that property. So if you're not doing that level of research, how do you know? How do you know where to start? How do you know where to stop? How do you know how many people you're going to compete against? It's very difficult to learn your walk-away price, or what I call your target price, and very difficult to learn how often that asset's going to be replicated in the market.
And you want to be confident. Like a lot of times what I say is like, it doesn't matter what the agent has listed on the price. This is our price. And if someone wants to get emotional and overpay, that's not going to be us. We're not going up to that. We're not going up to that level, and we'll move on. But once you know the market, you'll know what this is. What is the true value for this type of asset? But again, it does just take time in the market, time on the market, time looking at everything that transacts and sells.
And the difference between market value and your target price are very often 2 different things, right? They don't align. So, but you've got to know what market value is before you can set your target price, because it might be that you end up, I'm prepared to pay 50 or 100 more for this because my partner or my family really want to be in that school zone or walking to the shops or near that train station, whatever it might be. There might be a reason why it's worth more to you, but you've got to understand what the base price is for you to make a value decision around that. So once you've done that and you've been out physically inspecting all those properties and you're understanding the real-time prices being spent and the market depth, I think simultaneously, really, I would be building rapport with agents. So you're physically out there in front of them so they know who you are. Introduce yourself, smile, and be nice. Don't be a dick is the key thing I would say in that situation, having been an agent on the other end of that. People that are dicks at open for inspections aren't on my speed dial to call back anytime soon. If you want to treat people badly, and a lot of people want to treat estate agents badly, you'll very likely get treated pretty averagely on the return of that. So do the right thing, smile and be courteous, and turn up on time, return agents' phone calls, and give them quality real-time feedback, which they need to do their job in servicing their vendor, and you'll get more opportunities from those agents. But to stay top of mind, you take that shopping list that you've already built and you go into realestate.com, you search in the buy and the sold section for those types of properties at that price range that you're looking, and you make a note of all the agents' names and phone numbers and email address, and you build a BCC email list, and you email those agents every single week. So it'll take you 15, 20 minutes to set it up. It'll take you 10 seconds to send it once a week. I think it's typically between 15 and 30 active agents in an area. Mostly when I do this with clients, you could do 150 in certain areas where it's really built up. But if you had 30 odd people that were getting that email once a week, you're going to start to stay top of mind with the leading agents locally. They're the ones most likely to have other options for you that tick your boxes. And then you're going to get these opportunities first. And that's really important because you want to limit the buyer competition that you've got so you don't have to compete against more parties. That limits the emotional premium that you're going to have to compete against with other people that are end users. And it's going to let you see up to 40% more stock than what other buyers might see if they're sitting there waiting to track real estate and domain. So by the time you open the app every day and see what's come on in Mermaid Beach in my hood, there's already been tons of buyers on their database that have already been through that house. Okay. Yeah. Typically before the photo shoot or at the photo shoot, there's other people that have had a shot at that house before it got to realestate.com. Now, in a booming market, that may have been a deliberate ploy from the agent. They want to build market share and profile, and they want competition. So they'll bring that property to market even when they've shown it to their database. But in a changing market, in the shoulder market that we're in at the moment and going into a low, you definitely want to be at the front of the queue and at least have an opportunity. You're going to see more stock, as I say, reduce the competition and give yourself the best opportunity to control the negotiation and find those sellers that are motivated to trade and those nervous sellers where you might just find yourself a really good deal.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. There's a lot you just covered off. What I'm interested in are some strategies around like going into inspections. Like, have you got any little tips and tricks for us that we should be thinking about, or when we're actually walking in and inspecting?
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing that you can do, other than open your eyes and open for inspection and don't be a dick, as I just said, is to so of course you're going to do all the checking of all the condition of the house and checking the taps and looking at gutters and gardens and fences and all the rest of those things as best to your ability. And not everyone's got a trained eye, so you do the best you can. Take a friend as a second set of eyes, I think is really important, and write down any specific things you want to look at so that you've got that checklist with you and that you can tick them off so that you don't rush through in 15 minutes when there's 30 other people there and you didn't get to take note of what you were initially heading there to see. So that's one easy trick. But the key thing for me is to know what questions to ask the agent or the seller, if that's a private seller. Might not necessarily be at the open for inspection if it's busy, but you want to get these questions on the day and understand the motivation of the seller, the timing of it, and you want to work out whether there's an opportunity to negotiate harder because they've found something they want to buy or they've already committed elsewhere. And there might be a time frame where there's a great opportunity for you to act quickly. A lot of buyers make the mistake of they'll see the property on a Saturday, they'll fall in love with it, they'll call me on a Monday and they'll say, yep, great, we're interested in this property. I'll ring the agent on a Monday and it's sold on Saturday afternoon. So you have to move with speed. I tell all of my clients, speed kills. Okay, so it doesn't mean rushing. It means understanding the buying process, which is the point of building this Get Buy Ready course. So you know what steps are coming and in what order, and that you can move through those and navigate through them with speed so that you knock out your buyer competition and you get yourself in pole position to buy well.
Bloody hell. Okay. Well, what I'm interested in are what are those questions that we need to be asking the agents to be able to get the best deals. What we'll do right now is just go jump into our ad real quick, and then Scott will answer some of those questions and give us a bit of an insight. Would be great.
Okay.
The amazing thing with commercial property investing is that in most cases, it's cash flow positive from day one, which means that you can drive those profits towards paying down the debt. There are instances with commercial property investing where you can actually have the property pay itself off over 10 years, which is absolutely crazy. With commercial property, you get massive net yield, so you can expect anywhere between 6 to 10%. And as we've seen in the current boom, these properties not only provide large cash flow, they do certainly grow wildly in value too. Now, with big rewards comes some risk, and this is why you should de-risk your investment as much as possible. And the way you do that is with expert due diligence. And this is why we highly recommend people hire professionals to help you along in your investing journey. Steve Polisi of Polisi Property is one such expert. Being a chartered mechanical and structural engineer in a past life, Steve draws on his analytical and mathematical skills to do that expert due diligence for you. With 6 years experience in the space, Steve has over 1,200 property transactions under his belt. He's the guy you want in your corner, crunching the numbers and finding the best properties in the best locations, along with ensuring that you avoid the mistakes. Steve has actually even written the book on commercial property investing in Australia. And not only is it a bestseller, I believe it to be the most comprehensive in commercial property investing on the market today. He's been generous enough to give us a massive discount for our audience of 50%. So use the code OZPROP, click the link below, get a copy today, and start learning and getting on your commercial property investing journey.
Looking at some of the comments there. We'll dive in. So everyone, throw some of your questions in below, and we will get to as many as we can.
I love Chaz's question to get good one, dude.
Has Mermaid Waters become the world's most expensive suburb in Queensland?
What is a high-end 3-story, 370 square meter freestanding duplex on 500 square meters with 20 meters water frontage facing north on an open canal be worth at the moment? 2,975,000, depending on the finishes, Chaz. But yeah.
Very, very specific. But speaking of, Scotty, what are some specific questions we need to be asking agents? And also, do the questions that we ask when we first call the agent about the listing different to the questions that we ask when we're at the open or after the open?
Well, I think you want to try and do Sorry, you finished what you were saying?
Yeah, no, go on.
Most of the questions I think you want to be doing in private anyway. The question that I'd say don't ask is how many contracts you've got out. This might be just a New South Wales thing or a Sydney thing in particular where I worked, but almost every buyer that showed any interest would ask how many contracts you've got out. And that question is irrelevant. Agents are trained just to throw out a number like 3 or 4. Shows you that they've got interest in the property to create competition, but not enough to blow you away if they told you 10 or 15 and you might not bother pursuing the property because you think you're going to lose anyway. So you think about the right questions to ask that are going to give you an answer. One of the questions that I love asking the agents face-to-face if I can, but if not, definitely on the phone is fine, is structured like this. And I'll just say, rather than how many contracts you've got out, I'll say, what's the highest offer you've rejected to date? And then I'll just shut up. Now, you'll very quickly work out, if you're a reasonable judge of, human emotions on their face and whether or not they're telling you the truth, you'll quickly gauge whether they're lying to you or they're giving you a straight up answer. It's not 100% accurate, but having done this thousands of times, I've got a pretty good read on who's telling the truth. And that will typically set me up for the type of relationship I have in the negotiation going forward with that client. So if I ask you, Joe, at an open for inspection or face-to-face later at a private inspection, whatever it might be, that same question, and you say 690 straight away, I'd say, okay, fair enough. That sounds legit to me. You didn't have to think about it. You nailed it straight away. And that was a number that's, reasonable and realistic that could have happened. But many times, and I'd say the vast majority of times when I ask that same question, I get an answer like this. We've got people that are, there'll be people coming back on Saturday. There's a couple that have got heaps of interest in it, but, they're just struggling to get their finance across the line. They'll just basically bullshit to you. And the more detail they go in about making up a story, they're not telling you the truth. So there's 2 very different answers to that same question, and it puts them on the spot. Often when I ask that, I'll get a straight answer. They'll say 690 and the vendor counted at 710. Somewhere between 690 and 710 will buy it. The buyer is still there at 690, but we haven't sold it yet. So it's still, fair game for anyone else. So you've just got to ask those real questions and be in the game. If you're not asking those questions and digging and building a strategy around it, then you're going to find it very difficult to buy a property well. And the reason you're asking those questions is because I'm going to wrap all that up and feed that back to you as the agent when I make an offer in a day's time, a week's time, next month, whatever it is. Because I'm going to ask you those questions. What's the motivation to sell? Will they accept a 5% deposit? Can they push out the settlement to 8 weeks? Blah, 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 whatever it is. Can we include that TV unit or the TV on the walls, whatever it might be? And then when I go to make my offer, I'll check all of those things off, which I know the vendor is agreeable to or the vendor wants. So it becomes a really attractive offer rather than a buyer coming in and saying, hey, Joe, really like it. I'm not paying $695, get stuffed. I want 12-week settlement. We're not going to do 6 weeks. We've only got a 2% deposit. I don't care. We're not giving you any more. And the agent will go, well, that's great, but I've got this other offer at $693 or whatever, but they've just ticked every single box. And we're going to go with that client, and you don't even get a call back. You're not in the game. So you've got to ask those questions and then use it to structure an offer later.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. Like needing to understand the terms of the agreement as well, like of the settlement. What does the vendor actually want? Like, are there any specific terms that the vendor would prefer? And it's crazy the amount of deals that I've been working that I've heard like, oh, we've got an offer at the moment, but the vendor would really like a 90-day settlement. But we've got a 30-day settlement term. It's like, can you not, like as a buyer, can you not, go to 90 days? But that helps me in my negotiation. And then the agent, I imagine, Scott, and you can confirm this, is saying, look, this offer is an extra $5,000 that the other party has, but they're not doing that 60-day, 90-day settlement that you need, and this other guy's a bit of a dick. So I would say go with this guy because he's actually might not be giving you the exact price wise, but terms wise, it fits in nicely with what you asked for.
Yeah. And you'll be surprised. I mean, it may not be surprised. Maybe people are aware of this, but anyone that's not in the industry may be surprised at how many sellers take offers that aren't necessarily the highest price. So, and it might be it's $10,000 difference, or it might be $50,000 or $100,000 difference. It depends what price range you're hunting at. But I've seen it happen tons and tons of time that they'll take a client that meets the criteria that they need. And it's typically to do with staying in the property longer, like renting it back after they've sold, or delaying the settlement to allow them more time to go onward by themselves, or the reverse of that, and they've already purchased and they want a really short settlement. So they'll take less money to settle fast and get the deal done, so they meet the other contract that they've agreed in. So just be asking lots of questions and then feed all that back into your offer.
Yeah, another one that I like when I'm trying to identify like where do I need to be price wise on this thing, like what is the vendor's expectations around this purchase price? Because agents are crafty. They create competition. They'll have a $500,000 property that's listed at $450,000. So a great question that I like to use is what's the closest comparable sale that you've got for this property that stacks up? Like what is the like for like? And the agent always has that because that's how he sold the vendor. He told the vendor there's 123 Smith Street that went for this price. There's ABCD that went for this price. And then they'll say, oh, actually there was one there, 123 Smith Street that went for, $500,000. Great. Why is this one better? Why is this one worse? And then you can start to feel it out there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I ask that all the time as well. What's the best comparable sale that you've used to arrive at whatever figure it is? Just one thing around comparable sales. Most novice buyers would come to me as an estate agent and say, well, 12 Smith Street sold for X, so therefore I'm not paying any more than that. But they're not watching the market. They're not doing all the things that we've just discussed. And I would easily say to them, yeah, but 14 Smith Street just sold Thursday off market for X, so you're going to pay Y. Yep. You'll never win. You'll never, ever win against a good agent using comparable sales. So I don't really negotiate. This might be shocking to some people, but I rarely negotiate saying, hey, this sold for X, this sold for Y, so therefore we want to pay this. It's really got nothing to do with it. Those properties have sold. Every property is unique. It is what your buyer or you as the buyer is prepared to pay as your maximum walkaway price. And it's what the seller is prepared to, trade at their lowest possible price. And it's just getting those two sides together. And it is absolute, negotiation combat to get there through dialogue or whatever it may be. Trying to hang your hat on these particular sales is really difficult to do. And if you're doing it against a good agent, they'll rip you to shreds because they know more about the market than you do. And they're just better at ducking and diving around sale prices and reasons why. So you've got to be really careful about how you strategize when you negotiate.
Yeah, this is a good question by David Oliver. Can you throw a low number out there as a hypothetical to see their reaction? Would you want to see, like, has that happened to you? And give us some experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think David is an agent anyway, so I don't know if he's asking that question, but I do all the time. So if I'm ringing an agent, I'll say, for example, if we think we've done some research and we might think it's worth $1 million, I'll ring the agent and say, look, I've got a buyer that's sitting around that 950, 960 mark. Am I wasting my time? And very often the agent will say, no, you're not wasting your time. Like, we haven't had interest at that level yet. The vendor's expectations are probably a little above that at the moment, but we haven't got any other buyer interest at that level or above. Or they'll just say no straight away. They'll just say, yes, you're wasting your time at that level. It's a hard no, and you'd need to be, we've already knocked back 985, and you'd need to be in excess of that to be in the running. So you can put lowball kind of numbers out there as a feeler, but I never make lowball offers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And never at any stage do I lowball offer. I throw it out there as bait and gauge what the response is from the agents, but I don't start with that. So, I mean, we can talk about this in the negotiation stage, but I've got a pretty hard and fast rule around a 95 to 97% offer rule. We'll unpack that when we get to it. But so no lowball offers as such.
Yeah, exactly. Don't just think you're going to. Don't throw $50,000 under if you think you would like it for that much, when you just know it's not going to happen, because you're just going to get laughed out of the room and not taken seriously when you try and go for a real offer. So where are we now in this the phase of the 4 stages? So we've got.
We've crossed over a little bit between find and analyze. I think so. We're moving through that cycle pretty quickly, which I think is good. We don't want to spend hours going through it tonight, but we just want to give everyone a top level view. But you're really into the analyze part now by researching the properties and getting an understanding of where the value sits. One little trick that I use when I'm trying to arrive at a price when we're researching a property is, rather than just looking in the buy side to gauge what's on the market and try and guess at what things might be worth, and looking at the recent sales which are already sold, is to call the agents that are under offer currently in the buy section, because they're the most recent sales. Some of them might be a day old or a week old or 3 weeks old. And if you talk to those agents and you're nice to them and you explain to them that you're looking for a comparable sale on another property, very often they'll either tell you the exact price or they'll give you a very tight range if they can't disclose what the price was. And that will help you greatly to understand what people are paying very close to today when you go to make your offer. So, I think that's probably, a good place to leave that kind of find and analyze, if we don't want to be here all night talking about those things. Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to dive into in the analyze section as well?
No, in the analyze side of things, I think that's pretty much. I mean, there's a heap. So one thing that I haven't mentioned, Scott, I don't even think I've told you, is that everyone in my business has actually done your course, and it is now mandatory for every new person in my business to actually complete the full Get Buyer Ready course, because it's fundamental stuff. Like, no matter how experienced you are at buying investment properties, if you bought 1, 5, 10, or 20, there's so many little tips and tricks for how to buy investment properties in today's market, and also fundamental stuff. So we've gone past. So let's just go high level overview again. It's find, analyze, negotiate, and then transact. So now we've gotten through analyze, so negotiate. So what are some of the things that we can do? We found this amazing deal. What can we do? How can we secure this sucker?
Yeah, so we've talked about asking the right questions then that you're going to feed back to the selling agent or the seller directly in terms of the ideal or ultimate offer for them. A couple of little cheeky things that I do that have worked really well for me over the years. It may not be a one size fits all for everybody, but I find that if you're going to go to the trouble of making offers, and very often it's a formal written offer, it's a contract review, there's a lot of work that goes into preparing an offer formally to present to a client, that often I will just make an SMS offer on the run, and I do so for a couple of reasons. If you're going to send an email offer, if you're going to put it in writing like that, not on a contract, but as an email offer, you're giving the agent or the seller, the private seller, lots of time to formulate a response. Okay. So they're going to think about crafting the perfect response to you to get you to pay more and to get you emotionally invested in that process. If you SMS an agent on the run and they get tons of SMSs every day, tons of phone calls, they're running around like a blue ass fly all day, they're trained, and most of us are as humans, to just respond to SMS quickly when you get them, right? So really quickly, I SMS, we've got an interest at this level. We're at this price, these terms. Are we wasting our time, or is this something that you think you can make happen? And I'm looking for two things, right? Not only am I looking for a fast response, but I'm looking to either get a hard no, so I know that I need to start at a different level, and understand why, or I'm engaging that agent or the seller, and I'm either getting a response along the lines of put it in writing, or we accept it. That'll get accepted. So obviously, if it gets accepted and they're at that level, fantastic. If it's put it in writing, that means to me as an ex-agent that, hey, this is in the range that I've told the owners that they should be looking to accept, or it's the highest offer we've had to date. And I think I'm going to use this to condition the seller to get them to accept it, or to come back with a realistic counteroffer to try and piece this deal together. So either one of those results is great. Obviously, if you can get the deal across the line in that one SMS, brilliant.
Yeah.
But it just takes so much time out of the process. And I find that you get black and white answers rather than these structured responses that, leave a lot and they're ambiguous and you really don't learn much about it. So, I think that's really crucial for me, and it's worked really well to do those little SMS tips. We talked about not lowballing. I think that's a big problem that a lot of people, and you'll see this in the chat group all the time. People will say, "Oh, throw in a lowball offer, or it worked for me," or whatever. It's great. It might work for you occasionally, but if you throw in a lowball offer, as I said earlier, and they accept it, what gauge is that on market value and how well you bought? Is it just that they were wickedly overpriced and you threw them a stupid offer, but you actually paid over market for it?
I see it. I see it happen all the time with off-market opportunities where a real estate agent will because they send out off markets if you're on their database, and you would get this all the time as well, Scott, where an agent would send you an off-market property, but it would be way overpriced. Like it would just be an extra $200,000 on top or $100,000 on top, just taking full advantage of the fact that it's off market. So it has to be a great deal, and they just charge silly money for it.
Yeah, and off market is also bait for emotional end users or frustrated investor buyers that have been missing out on other properties that want to wrap something up with limited competition. So, if they see something off market, they're like, bang, I'll jump on this really quickly. And they don't think enough about the pricing. Like, why is it priced at that level? They just see the opportunity of, okay, hang on, I can buy this without the 50 people turning up on realestate.com on Saturday behind me. So it all comes back to understanding real-time market value and the buyer depth. Those are the two things we talk about a lot in the find stage. And if you understand how to do that and you commit that very short period to understand that market, then that skill stays with you for life, I think, and you really understand the dynamics of how the property market works. So, yeah, I think if you're going to lowball, the problem with it is, for me, and this is a really good thing to unpack, I think, is that most people think, well, I'll throw in a lowball offer and at least it'll gauge, kind of what response I'll get, and maybe we'll go unders and overs and unders and overs, and we'll end up getting to a level that we're happy at. But the majority of people don't negotiate like that. How it typically works, having done this, as you said, over 3,000 times, is that you'll make an offer as a buyer, and if it's too low, you won't engage the seller, and you'll get a flat no or no response. Okay. If you get a flat no or no response, you've learned nothing about the motivation for the seller and what price they'll take. Okay. If you've learned nothing, it was a complete waste of everyone's time. Worse than that, if you've thrown an offer out there and they say no or ignore it, you've got to start bidding against yourself. When you start bidding against yourself and increasing, then they know they've got a buyer that's emotional or it's on the hook. They're more inclined to say no and reject your next offer or forthcoming offers because they believe that you're, invested in that process and you're going to potentially be a buyer at a higher price. So you've really got to be careful about where you position your offers. There's a real psychology around why I offer at certain levels, and it's based on results over so many transactions of both properties that we've landed and properties that we've missed over those 28 years. So my trick is a 95 to 97% of the way towards the target price. So you raised this before, what is your walkaway number? And if we just kind of put the 95% thing away for the side for a second and understand what your target price is, which is what I call your maximum walkaway number, is your target price. Once you've established where that price is, and we've joked around with this, Joe, before about where you set your target price, and I play a game with my clients to say, okay, well, we've done all the research. This is where we think the market estimate is. What do you want to spend? And it might be around $1 million. And they say, okay, $1 million. And it's okay, great. Well, let's play a little game. The agents just called me. They've knocked back $1 million. They've just told me $1.015 million will buy it this afternoon with no competition. What do you want to do? Look, we'd go to $1.015 million because we want to wrap it up. Great, $1.015 million is your target price. Okay, so let's keep going. The agent called $1.015 million is not going to buy it. They want $1.025 million to wrap this up with no competition. What do you want to do? Joe, we don't really want to go to $1.025 million, but look, we would if we had to get a deal done. Okay, well then it's not $1 million or $1.015 million, it's $1.025 million. You get my drift where I'm going here, though. You play that game until there's a hard number at which you say, if it goes to $1.031 million, we really don't care. It was too much.
Yeah.
Someone's emotionally invested in that process more than us, and we're happy to walk away. It's above market value. So you've got to know market value. You've got to be hard with yourself about your target price. So when you do that, then you can formulate that 95 to 97% rule, which I apply, and it's going as close as you can to that target price that you're going to engage the seller. And you're either going to buy it with your first offer, or you're going to get a very good sense of where the seller is and very likely a counter offer to understand where you've got to move from A to B to close the deal. So I'm looking to close a deal in the shortest amount of steps in the fastest amount of time. So I'm going to crush any buyer competition, and I'm going to move, as Elon says, straight to the end as quickly as I can in a negotiation. And that is really crucial. And that's why I say speed kills, and you've got to get there fast. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes that makes perfect sense. So there is a question here actually from Haley. She said, when agents say we have another offer, are they BSing or is it normally true? And it would be cool to chat through because you must see some agent bluffing and your own bluffing as well as a buyer. What do you think about this?
Very, very often you'll call and the first thing an agent will do is introduce competition into the conversation. So you should just be prepared for that because it's almost like in the user guide 1.0 for real estate agents when they go to real estate school is to create competition against you. But if you ask the questions that I talked about before in terms of what's the highest offer you've rejected, you'll very often get an understanding that there is no other buyer. So that takes that out of the equation and reduces the risk that you're going to get lied to later on. So if you ask those hard questions and those direct questions, it'll hopefully help you further into the negotiation later on. In terms of how do you know if they're BSing, it goes back to what we discussed at an open home. You ask them hard question, do they give you a straight answer and fast, or do they make up something with a story and just does it sound like a lot of waffle? You just have to put your human emotion into this and try and read through it as best you can. There's no easy solution to understanding if you're being BS'd or not. It's that's the art of sales and art of the game. Good salespeople will unfortunately be very good against buyers, and this is why I think any buyer should be using expert help, whether it's a buyer's agent like Joe or someone like us that's a expert negotiator. Most buyers don't have a clue. You do this once, twice, 3 times in your life. We do this once, twice, 3 times a day. We just operate at a much different level in terms of the BS meter and understanding who's telling the truth and who's not. And it's a lot to do with my ear for this. Having sat and acted as an agent for that long, I know the line that I would use on you and when, and I know the percentage chance of that being successful in that situation. So in the reverse of that, when I'm acting for you as a buyer, I can almost tell you in advance before the agent talks what they're going to say and what it means. And that sounds really egotistical, and it's not meant to be that. It's just that this is a game of repetition.
Yeah.
And
let me just stop you right there. You're about to say this, and this. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. You were. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's 1,000 throwaway lines that auction agents are trained for, and I know if they say a particular line, it's just the same old BS that comes out, from after them. So really, you've got to take control of the negotiation. You do it on your terms as best you possibly can. You have a time frame that you're working to as well, so it's not open-ended. How you might do that, we're getting a little bit off course here, but in terms of how you might do that is to introduce competition. I like to do it at a much earlier stage in the process. So if I'm buying my own property at the open for inspection or at a private buyer inspection, or even when I'm calling the agent for the first time to ask them questions about the property before I inspect it, I might say, hey, Joe, my name's Scott. I'm interested in 10 Smith Street that you've got there. Listen, Joe, we're a long way down the line on another property. We're under offer on another local property off market with a local agent. We would love that property. We've been looking for a couple of months, so we don't want to lose that opportunity. But we've just seen 10 Smith Street come on the market. It looks like it ticks all of our boxes, and it would be a preference to the one that we've been dealing with the other agent on. When can I get through it and see it? Because I'm ready to pull the trigger on the other property, and I don't want to miss out on both. Now, if you say that, okay.
Yeah.
Now that even if you don't refer back to it for a week or two, when you get back to that agent and you want to make an offer on the property, you can say, "Hey Joe, you know how I told you that we're on that under offer on that other property? Look, the owner on that property has had enough of us dragging our feet. They've told us we need to act by, today's Wednesday. They've told us by close of business Thursday or Friday. Otherwise, they're going to put the property on the market this weekend and open it up to other buyers." It turned out that we were right when we looked at the photos of this. 10 Smith Street is our preference. It's a beautiful home. We really want to buy it. You got to harp on the fact that it's my preference. We want to buy it. That's not saying I'm desperate. That's just saying I'm committed to you, Joe, on 10 Smith Street. That's what the agent needs to hear from you. I'm committed to
because
this.
They don't want
really like it.
They don't want to feel like you're competing. You're saying that, oh no, actually we're fighting each other off against each other, where I'm happy with this one, I'm happy with this one. You're just saying, this is the best one ever. What you've got here, Jennifer, is the best, but I have to take this one over here at whatever that Smith Street was because of, X reason, because I'm getting a lot of pressure.
And you're dangling that carrot that I've got pressure. You've got to do it, Joe. You've got to do it by a certain time, but it's not me. Don't blame me. It's the seller down the road or whatever. So you're kind of creating a third party who's taking all the heavy lifting for you and doing all the heavy lifting for you. But in doing that, you've just created a deadline on the seller. So if let's play this out in two ways really quickly. So if I came in as a buyer and said, okay, I love the property. I want to pay $1 million. Ticks all the boxes. It's so good. But my budget's $1 million. That's all I can afford. So I'm going to give you my max right now, $1 million. And you go, great. Okay. Thanks very much, Scott. I'll take that to the owner and come back to you. Buyer number 2 comes in and goes, look, we love the property. We've got time pressure, blah, 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 the story that I just told you. And because of all these reasons, we've been really tracking the market really closely. And because of the price that we've got the other one under offer at, we really understand the local market value at the moment. And the value for your house sits at, $1.5 million or $995 or whatever it is. And we need to act quickly. It's not us, but we need to act quickly. Well, then it's two very different conversations the agent has with the owner. One is, hey, it's Joe here. Scott came through. He offered $1 million. Will he go up any more, Joe? No, that's his absolute max. He just told us that's his budget. And they'll say, thanks, Scott, very much for his time. It's a great offer, but he can't afford our house. Our house
exactly.
Is worth, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The other conversation is going to be, okay, all right, well, they're under offer on another property. We need to make a snap decision, today, tomorrow. All right, they've been looking for ages. They know the market really well. They're already under offer on another property. It's a conversation they have to really think about. What's our home really worth? Rather than someone saying budget, flip it to value and have that time pressure on them. And that's going to generate a completely different outcome, those two offers.
Yeah, that makes such a massive difference. This is one of the questions agents ask you early on, because you see online, oh, it's listed at 500,000, and people are like, oh, well, how much is the property? And then they always, what do you think it's worth? And then kind of lead you in that, well, actually, I think it's worth about 650. Perfect. Okay, now they've got a frame of reference for where you're looking to go. And when you come on the weekend, I'm going to have that conversation, play the field a little bit more, and see where you're going to come out at. But if it is at your budget, the vendor doesn't care that your budget isn't at 650. They're like, well, my property is worth 670. So that's it. It's that value to worth. One thing I would also mention on top of what you were talking about there with mentioning another property is, don't go too hard with that without understanding what the process of the purchase is. What happens next? Let's say I submitted an offer to you, Mr. Agent. What happens next? Do you want to talk to that process a little bit?
Yeah, it's pretty. You see a lot of buyers come in and they use that story, and the agents will say, oh, same old. Everyone tells me there's another property or whatever. It's got to be used well. And that's why I told you, you've got to dangle that carrot, in the very first call, because it's really easy to refer back to that. And they think it's legit straight away, because they're like, oh yeah, he did actually tell me that 5 days ago or 7 days ago. If you try and introduce it all in one phone call, hey, I've got another property and I only want to pay X and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, well, everyone says the same thing. There's another property. So it's really about how you structure it. So as you say, you've got to understand the process of that as well. Another thing that used to happen to me as an agent when we were negotiating is, so often people would come in thinking the right way to win a negotiation is to beat you down, is to say, that's it, take it or leave it, I'm out kind of thing. And it's like, that's not how you negotiate. It's not how you should live your life, dealing with other humans. It's just going to get the backup of the other person. And if they've got another opportunity to sell it to someone else for the same money, they're going to go out of their way to not sell it to you. So you've got to deal with these things respectfully. And there's tactics to this, right? You're getting sold hard at the other end, and you need to be, reciprocating that to a certain degree and controlling your end of the negotiation as well as best you can. If you can't do it, don't start what you can't finish. If you're not confident, don't start throwing numbers out there and then backtracking or getting flustered or get caught bidding against yourself in small increments. Outsource it to someone who actually does this and has got complete arm's length to the transaction and is non-emotional. That is the best way to do it, to give yourself the best opportunity to buy it without getting carried away or burnt. And one really key thing to harp on here is, and I don't want to keep harping on agents being bad. I did it for my whole working career before this, so I can't be too harsh on agents. But the best agents will fleece you without you knowing. Okay, so if you think you're getting a great deal and it's all very easy, it's very likely it's because you're overpaying for the property. Okay, and it's really easy because you've got no competition. So they're just like giving you a rails run straight into the signed contract because there's no one else that's paying the stupid price that you offered. So the best agents are there, to make you feel like the process is a win. And they'll often say things like, I want to be really happy and you've got to win out of this, and so does my client. But they're not interested in you winning. They get paid by the seller. They get a 5-star review from the seller. You list and last is the term in the industry as a real estate agent. If you can list, you last. That's longevity. So you've got to be able to get your next listing, and that happens when you sell for really high prices. So just be really conscious of that if you think it's going really smooth and really easy, it's often because you're out of your depth, and a good agent is leading you to, the result that they want.
Yeah, and that was one of the struggles that I had with one of my first negotiations on one of my first properties, was that I got stuck bidding against myself, because I pretty much just said, hey, I've got here's my offer. Great. Okay. Well, I'll take it back to the vendor and I'll let you know. Most likely he's running around chatting to all the other buyers, and he's got my offer here. So now he's just taking that with him, and it went weeks. It went weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I want to buy this thing. He's like, I know, but like the vendor's saying you need to give a little bit more. So can you give us an extra 5,000? No, I'm not giving you an extra 5. Are you sure that's the last? Okay, let me chat and blah, blah, blah. And then you go up 1,000, and then you go, and then he goes back to the, oh, look, can you go even further? I can't promise that the vendor's going to accept it, but can you just squeeze that little extra bit? And then all that time he's shopping around the rest of the market to kind of bring you in. So I can see, I've been a part of that. And this is what interested me so much about your, about what you do in the course. You can see these things happening out there in the real world. And, it's good to understand the tricks and tips of the agents and what they use. What is their ammunition? There you go. It's out there, Scotty. You guys would make a dream team together.
I did propose to him, David, but he shot me down. So
yeah. I did say no.
Yeah,
while he was still down on his knee.
Yeah, there's so many tricks and stuff. And look, this is my wheelhouse, right? Like I could talk to these points for hours. And if you open up the can of auction and scripts and dialogues and the things that we used to do on the auction floor, pre-auction, post-auction to get the results we needed, then this would be another 3-hour talk just on auctions. So there is a lot to learn, and this is the reason for the course, right? Like we're trying to educate as many people. The real mission statement for me, having left the industry 6 years ago or 7 years ago, Nelly, is to transform the way Australians transact property. So that's at the very heart of everything that I do, and you've seen that here. Giving back all the time, I try and unpack warts and all, everything that you're going to come up against, because it can be really challenging and you're spending a huge amount of money and you just don't want to F it up.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest thing, right? It's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you can get one insight, like this is, if you can get one insight out of it and can take away for you, it's going to be worthwhile, because at this level of money that you're spending out there, it doesn't matter what the thing is, as long as you're getting your ROI on the other end. So what you've been kind enough to do for us, Scotty Aggett, is you've created this course. I think is this the first release? Like, is this the first time we're kind of talking about this? No one knows about this thing just yet.
No.
So you have been kind enough to create this platform and share all of your insights over 28 years, but you've also given our community a massive discount on the access to the platform. So I wanted to give you guys a quick snapshot overview of what you get internally of the platform, and then cover it off. So this is establishing your budget, going through it. We then find the house, analyze the house, negotiate on the house, and then transact on the house, exactly like what we were saying. It's got actually, one of the things you didn't talk too much about, Scotty, was the some of the templates and stuff that you have in here. So all of those email templates that you need to send to the agents, some of the text message things, you've got that all built in. We never, actually, that's one thing to mention as well. I know Jeff is definitely a big proponent of this, is we don't sell stuff in this group. We don't push things on anyone. But for Scott, like for value, this is what we are going to willing and happy to push forward to people, because I use this in my business for every single new person and myself. I've gone through the whole thing, and I know that you're going to save thousands of dollars on doing this. So usually the course is where's the price?
It's $995, the course, the ticket price. We're going to give just kind of a limited window for Oz Property Investor community to get a $500 discount off that. So it's $495. That's not going to last particularly for long. This is the first, as Joey just said, this is because I'm really active in this group and have been from the very start. This is the absolute first place we wanted to share it with everybody and give that value. So I wanted to offer everyone a massive discount to be able to jump in there and grab that and build those skills for life, so that they can apply these and make sure that they get a lot more than $995 worth of value over time.
Well, they don't even need it, $995 worth of value. If you enter the code, what is it, API, Oz Property Investors 500, you get $500 off. I'm just going to pop that in the comments there. If you enter API 1000, you get $1,000 off. Don't try it. Don't try it. God, I hope you haven't done that. That would be.
No, we haven't done that.
This is my honey has found 10 coupons. So nice. That is going to be available, I believe, for the next 7 days. So if anyone wants to jump in on that, you can. You get access to the entire course. What we've covered off today: find house, analyze the house. It's got all the templates. It's got all the tools, tips, tricks on how to find these properties, how to identify market depth, how buyers work, due diligence, and about offers. There was actually one awesome one. Where did you call it? It was the ultimate. Yeah, ultimate offers is well worth a listen.
So it's 44 lessons, and it's done in short adult learning, 2, 3, 5, 7 minute kind of lessons. So it's packed with all of my warts and all tips and tricks. As I said, there's lots of downloads. There's case studies. There's quizzes after each of those 4 main subheadings as well to understand where you're at in the process. It's about 3.5 hours in content. You can watch it in video or just read the copy. So hopefully people get great value, and I'd love to get your feedback from it. Does the course work for commercial too? It's mainly I mainly work in the residential space. Lots of these things are going to work identically across commercial property as well, so it's going to work for both of those. Do I still offer the seller's advocacy? Yes, we do. Still do agent selector. We do a lot of those for clients around the country.
This is a good question.
Yeah, and is it lifetime access? So there's a Facebook community, and there's absolutely no time limit on that. The course is obviously you're going to have that for life. If I update that, there's no problems. There'll be no extra charge to it. We are doing a finance ready and an investor ready course specifically as well that we'll have next. But this is the nuts and bolts of it that I think everybody has to have a really good grounding on before you go any further in terms of any other learnings. So hopefully that gave you a bit of a taste of what it is, and you get to listen to my voice for another 3.5 hours if you want to jump in.
Scott, has 309 been rejected by the seller?
Yes, it has. Yeah, it absolutely has. And I've got firm interest around 495. And at this point, you may end up having to go above the target, just based on how much other interest there is in the course.
So there's only 10 slots. See, this is what the bad agents would be doing. They'd be saying, well, there's only 10 slots left. There's only 10 of those slots, or maybe the really good ones. There you go. There were some more questions, though. I just wanted to kind of get that out there so people can sign up if they would like to and take advantage of that. We don't ever sell anything on this thing, only things that we believe are going to help you guys. And just getting offers thrown. Look at this. David's going in at higher. He can pay. David said he's already paid $999.
Sweet.
Let's jump. So throw any of the questions that you guys have as well throughout the live session that we've done. There was a question here. How do you make offers when the same property is advertised as 600 to 650 from 550 and make an offer? Let's say the true value is 580. Didn't read it before I brought the question up.
If I can kind of make sense of that question, how it's written as well. So if it's advertised 6 to 650, you want to start at 550 and you think the value is 580. Is that right? Yep. So if you've done your market research and you understand where the value sits, then you need to put a case together around why it sits at that level. As I said to you, you're not going to win any negotiation around comparable sales, but you've still got to put the case forward that things have been selling for X or Y, rates are going up, there's not as many buyers in the market, days on market is blowing out. Find whatever negatives you can to put some pressure on that, but understand what the seller wants as well. So you might be able to dress up the offer that ticks all their boxes. It's just not going to be at the price they want. So they're going to have to, to take market if they're going to get realistic. The other thing that's important in that is sometimes putting time pressure on it, because, if they're getting other low offers that are below that, and all of a sudden you've made a fair offer that's reasonable, then the agent may turn around to say to them, hey, I've been working on this for 60 days. This is the best offer you've had, probably the best offer you're going to get. and you should take it. So you've just got to be in it to win it. And if they turn it away and they're not realistic, it might not be the right time to buy that property. Either you're not going to buy it because the vendor's just got unrealistic expectations, or it's going to take another month and a second agent or 3 months for them to realize where market is and get actually motivated to trade. So some property negotiations just drag on because unrealistic seller.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. That isn't always hit home, is that there are vendors out there that just say, I want 580. Right, that's it. I'm going to get 580. And the real estate agent says, well, no, the market's 550. And they'll just keep harping on, and it'll stay on the market until there's enough movement and it gets that price.
A lot of that is
that.
Yeah, a lot of that at the moment is born out of a changing market. So we're in what I call a shoulder season. We were in peak, summer school holidays when you go to book your holiday, and it's not quite that low of winter, but it's in that shoulder season. And that's where we are on the property clock in most areas in Australia at the moment. And the problem with that is that agents have gone in months ago and pitched at these unrealistically high prices, which they thought may have been achievable in February, for example. The owners have taken a little while to get their house prepared, or for whatever reason brought the property to the market. Might have been the end of lease or whatever they were waiting to run out. And all of a sudden the market has changed. So they've got these expectations to come to market at X, and reality is it's worth Y. So it might not be the cycle for them, that they've got unlimited, unrealistic expectations. And in the shoulder season, it's really difficult to match those up.
Yeah, it'd be hard because you look at the past boom and people are saying, well, this person got 650,000, this person got 670,000, and you don't think I'm going to be able to get that? Like that. It's going to be interesting to see how agents react to these type of conversations, because for the past two years, they haven't had to. It's just been boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. And from an agent's perspective in that situation, you'd say, okay, well, it's not worth 620 or 640 like the other ones that sold in February or March. It's worth 570 today. But, what are the drivers for you to sell? And understanding your client, you'll say, well, the reason that you brought this to market is because you're trading up, or you're trading down, or trading sideways, or whatever. So the properties that you're looking at have also dropped in price. So it's all relative, right? And if you're trading up in that instance, you might sell for 570, but the gap that you've saved at the property at $1 million is larger. So you're actually ahead trading in that market. So it's, a good agent can really piece together that strategy and bring those two sides together. The bad agents, the inexperienced agents, really struggle with that. And that's where you'll see a property sit on the market for a long time and have that blown out days on market. People perceive that as an opportunity to buy cheaper. It's not always the case. And it's because the agent can't get their client under control.
Yeah, definitely. I see that a lot. People are like, oh, it's been on the market for 120 days. What a bargain, what a steal. And it's a bit of a nightmare sometimes. It's like, you just don't want to even get involved in that. I mean, if you can get a deal, it's always worth the question, but it's definitely try and understand the vendor's motivation a little bit more than you do first up. Everyone, throw in any more questions that you've got about negotiation, about the course, about anything that we've covered off today, and we will jump in. I've got a question, Scotty. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people do, everyday investors out there, when they're making offers? Like, what are some of the big no-nos that we should kind of avoid?
Well, I think to recap on what we discussed, it's, not understanding the market they're buying in, not doing enough due diligence on the property, lowballing offers, and then moving really slowly through the contract stage. And something that we didn't get to talk about in the transact bit is understanding the difference. A lot of investors don't really understand the difference between a conditional and an unconditional offer, and the pros and cons of using those to your advantage as a buyer. So, when you're hiring an expert, you're also hiring someone that's done a lot of work in that contract area as well, and understands what can be included or excluded in a contract. What the benefits might be of using a conditional contract in certain scenarios, or making sure it's an unconditional offer, which is going to increase the chances of getting your offer across the line and faster. So there's a whole heap of things like that if you're an investor, there's a lot of mistakes people make around just being a bit too laid back around that, and not being educated enough around those tools that you use at your advantage.
Well, and every state has different legislation and rules and and mediums for transacting on property. So like in South Australia, for instance, there's a 2-day mandatory cooling off period. In WA, there's no cooling off period. In New South Wales, there's a 0.25% fee if you cool off. So all of these little things you need to factor into your negotiation when you're working that and working the deal.
Totally.
In that state, especially if you're looking at multiple states, you've really got to get your head around it, which I think is why it's most important to identify the region that you're buying in, become the local expert for that area, and just be confident that you've made the right choice with your data and analysis. Here's a good question from the one and only Jeff Miles. He can't kick back and relax. He has to he has to bring it up. When are you buying your 30th property, Scotty?
Man, I need to earn more money. That's what I need to do. I need to, I need to be more appealing to the
Well, this is why we got to
banks.
start pumping out these bloody courses. Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Go and buy the course, people, and I can buy my 30th and get a nice car and go on a nice holiday. Only joking. When am I going to buy the next one? Well, I just did a subdivision in Mermaid Waters, and I probably need to develop those and sell one of the ski lodges in Japan and just repurpose the capital and consolidate. Yeah, so that's kind of on my agenda in the next 12 months or 18 months, is build a nice family home, build one to sell, and sell one of the ones in Japan and bring that cash back to Australia. It's not working very hard for me when the border's up and no one can go skiing from ANZ, which isn't fun. And there's another question there as well about what do you consider medium to long term in holding property? I'm a property flipper. I'm a serial pest when it comes to buying and selling properties. So I don't have a strategy for holding long term. Is the warts and all answer from me, to be honest. I have too much fun buying and selling. I enjoy that part of it. So that is my strategy. And for right or wrong, it's just what I enjoy doing. To take from Bushy Martin, who I really admire as a very smart person in this space. He seems to be stuck on 15 years as a good magic number. That if you spend 15 years in the market, no matter what point you buy in at, you're safe. So I think 15 years is probably a good sweet spot to answer that question. What do you reckon, Joey?
Yeah. I had a client say this today actually to me, and he was like, I'm ready to buy now, so I'm going to buy now. Why would this is a long-term buy and hold. I'm going to be holding this for 20 years. Like if I get in now or I get in 6 months, like what's the difference? I'm ready right now. Your wife could lose her job, you could lose your job, and you then have to go through probation to then get your loan pre-approved, and you got to wait 3 months for that, and then there's kids get in the way, and all of that stuff completely changes it. But for me, I see residential property as the place to build your wealth. You accumulate as many properties as you can at the right, like not as many at a value perspective. You get good high quality assets that you can add value to and build up your capital base as quickly and as efficiently as you can by doing value added stuff and renovation subdivisions like what you're doing, Scotty. And then you can transition into things like commercial property, which are going to be more of your cash flow focus. I see residential as building the equity and building the capital, and then using commercial as your cash flow vehicle. That's how I kind of see it. But yeah, you do have to hold it for the long term. Like you need to be thinking 10, 20 year, 30 year decisions when you're doing it. But what's the purpose of that product? Like, why am I buying a place? What is the highest and best use of that land? So right now, we bought a property for a client that has a property here at the front, and you can subdivide it and split it at the back. So he doesn't need to be a subdivision expert right now, but he'll subdivide it in 10 years time and something like that. Doesn't need to know how to do it. He'll do it when he's ready and his money works. He'll keep acquiring assets similar to that. He'll renovate them to withdraw some equity and then buy another one with that deposit that's been magically created by renovation. And then what will happen is he'll tap out of finance, and then he'll be like, oh, cool. Well, now I'll just turn around and look at my portfolio, and then I'll subdivide and split those off for large capital, and then transition into commercial. That's the way I kind of look at some strategies. But really, it all depends on what is your ultimate goal. What is that end goal of what you actually need, and how long is it going to take you, and what are the next steps that you need to do? And yeah, there's a heap of stuff that goes into that.
Solid.
But Scotty Aggett, I wanted to thank you so much for all your time, energy, and effort today. This has been absolute masterclass in how to find, analyze, negotiate, and secure an investment grade property. For anyone that wants to take advantage of the Get Buy Ready course, I will post it with our coupon code to save you $500 in here again. It's going to be around for 7 days, so take full advantage of it. But other than that, Scotty, how can people get in touch with you outside of this to learn a little bit more? Because I imagine people are probably like, I don't know if we answered all of these questions that people have about this course, about what it is, how it all works. If someone has any questions, what can they do?
Well, there's a great explainer video on that getbuyready.com.au course page anyway. So if you've got some questions about the course specifically, go there. Any questions, just flick them over to me. You can find me at hellohouse.co, and that's HAUS, the German spelling. I post lots. Like I do a lot of thought leader kind of writing on the industry on LinkedIn. So if you're interested in following anything on the industry and my take on what's happening, then yeah, I'd love to see you over there. But reach out anytime. I'm really easy to find. I'm really open to share all of my knowledge, especially to great people that are in this community. So I've made lots of really good friends out of this community already. There's lots of great people here. So yeah, lean on me if you've got any questions, whether you use me or not. I'm very happy to help anytime with your negotiation questions or anything, property related like that. So thanks so much for having me, and thanks for listening again. I really appreciate the airtime, and yeah, I'm sure there's lots of value in that course. I'm really proud of the Get Buy Ready course and what we've produced. So yeah, I look forward to getting the feedback from people in the community that have taken that up.
Yeah, you should, mate. You should. So anyone that has taken up, please provide as much feedback as you can. And thank you everyone for jumping in the comments and making this interactive and fun. We'll have Jeff back. Actually, are you on next week, Jeff? No, I don't think you are, mate. I think you've got another day off. Scott Aggett, thank you very much, everyone. Let's go buy a property. We will see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.